We're live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Coming up in the next hour. India counters Trump's tariff threat, terms US and EU criticism unjustified and unreasonable, says will take all necessary steps to safeguard its interest and economy. Philippines President Marcos accorded ceremonial reception at Rashtrapati Bhavan. He will meet Prime Minister Modi on his first state visit to India. Key agreements to be exchanged. Six years of Article 370 abrogation, a historic turning point in India's constitutional and political journey. Investments, infra upgrades, tourist footfall hike, mark changes in Jammu and Kashmir. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu vows to update Gaza conflict strategy ahead of key UNSC meeting, while airdrop humanitarian assistance continues to reach. And Brazil's former President Bolsonaro put under house arrest after defying court's order in a move that could escalate tensions with the administration of US President Donald Trump. Well, on to the top story. The Indian government has strongly hit back at the US after Donald Trump threatened to substantially raise tariffs on goods from India over its purchase of Russian oil. In a statement issued by the Ministry of External Affairs, the government stated it has been targeted by the United States and EU over its purchase of Russian oil. It said that India began importing from Russia because traditional supplies were diverted to Europe after the outbreak of the conflict. The United States at that time actively encouraged such imports by India for strengthening global energy market stability. The government added that India's imports are meant to ensure predictable and affordable energy cost to the Indian consumer. They are a necessity compelled by global market situation. However, it is revealing that the very nations criticizing India are themselves indulging in trade with Russia. Unlike our case, such trade is not even a vital national compulsion. The ministry put forth figures of EU's oil trade with Russia, saying in 2024 they had a bilateral trade of euro 67.5 billion in goods with Russia. In addition, it had trade and services estimated at 17.2 billion euros in 2023. This is significantly more than India's total trade with Russia that year or subsequently. European imports of LNG in 2024, in fact, reached a record 16.5 million tons, surpassing the last record of 15.21 million tons in 2022. The government also mentioned that Europe-Russia trade includes not just energy, but also fertilizers, mining products, chemicals, iron and steel, and machinery and transport equipment. Well, talking about the US, MEA said that America continues to import from Russia uranium hexafluoride for its nuclear industry, palladium for its EV industry, fertilizers, as well as chemicals. Thus, the Indian government categorically stated that in this background, the targeting of India is unjustified and unreasonable. It also clearly stated that like any major economy, India will take all necessary measures to safeguard its national interest and economic security. And for more, we have Shubhendu Ghosh joining us on this. Well, Shubhendu, given the Indian government's assertion that both the US and EU continue significant trade with Russia and terms the criticism by them as unjustified and unreasonable. All right, now we take you to Rajghat, where Philippines President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. is paying tribute to Mahatma Gandhi by laying a wreath. Philippines President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has begun his first state visit to India, describing the country as a valued friend. And right now, he is at Rajghat paying tribute to Mahatma Gandhi by laying a wreath. Earlier than this, he got a ceremonial reception at the Rashtrapati Bhavan and started his visit to India yesterday. Also, President Ferdinand Marcos is scheduled to hold bilateral discussions in some time from now. In fact, to tell you, diplomatic relations between both the countries were established in 1949. And right now, we are again joined by our colleague Shubhendu Ghosh for more on the tariffs. Well, Shubhendu, if we talk about the bigger picture, how does the Indian government's strong pushback against the US narrative reflect a broader shift in India's policy from strategic balancing to assertive economic sovereignty?
That's right, Libakshi. India has given a very reasoned and logical response to certain bullying tactics by the West, led by the United States. Here, the context of India's energy trade with Russia. India has categorically said that it is in its national interest to be able to source energy supplies for its 1.4 billion population from the best source possible. And it has also, in its response, exposed in many ways what can be seen as the double standards of the West. The European Union, America, who are dissuading India from having any trade ties with Russia, with energy ties with Russia, are themselves significantly importing energy and other equipments from Russia. The examples that you also gave, and the ministry has highlighted that European Union, for whom Russia used to be the largest energy supplier till 2021, 2022, the conflict with Ukraine breaks out and the sanctions are put. But that doesn't really put an end to the energy trade and trade in other equipments between Russia and European Union. It continues to import significant amount of energy. In fact, in 2023-24, it imported higher than what it did when the war broke out. So the energy trade, trades of goods and services between European Union and Russia continues. America continues to import significant nuclear material and equipments for its nuclear industry. But the West wants India to end its energy and economic ties with Russia. These are double standards. India, as a developing power, as a developing economy, has significant energy requirements. The global energy market was also significantly impacted and destabilized by the Russia-Ukraine conflict. In such a context, India had to look for the most appropriate source, which was affordable and accessible for Indian population. And that's what India did in accessing energy from Russia. And in that sense, India has given a very clear and logical and reasoned response to why West should rethink about the expectations that it has from India and other similar economies.
All right, Shubhendu. Also, given the comparative data on EU and the US trade with Russia, to what extent you think can India leverage this argument to reshape the global perceptions around its energy choices? And as you also mentioned, challenge Western double standards?
That's right, Libakshi. We have to see that a global economic order, international order, may not always follow the right ethical norm. It is not always about equality. Powerful countries do try to arm twist countries that are developing, countries that are relatively smaller economy. These are realities of global exchange. However, India has made its position very, very clear. It is not as if it is not playing by the rules. In fact, it is following the same rules and standards that are in fact earlier that was glorified by the West. America, in the beginning of the conflict, had in fact appreciated India's engagement with Russia, given that it helped stabilize the energy market. And now that the Trump administration has a different worldview, it for itself has also been changing its stance as far as the Russia-Ukraine conflict is concerned. It is the West, the European Union, NATO, America that needs to look in their own backyard as to the reasons why this Russia-Ukraine conflict has prolonged, and instead of that, not locate the problem and the solution in a third country like India. And therefore, India has given a very, very clear response to the manner in which it will prioritize its own national interest. And yes, global bullying and economic arm twisting is a reality, but India for now is holding on strong on its position.
All right, Shubhendu, thank you so much for all those details. And moving on, Philippines President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., who is on a 5-day India visit, received a ceremonial welcome at the forecourt of Rashtrapati Bhavan. The visiting President Marcos reaffirmed the alliance and the partnership the two nations share in strengthening the bond. Well, the leader also said that Indo-Pacific is the correct evolution of Asia-Pacific. Right up on your screens, you can see the president receiving a guard of honor at the forecourt of the Rashtrapati Bhavan this morning. You're seeing visuals of the Rashtrapati Bhavan, where Philippines President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. was accorded a ceremonial reception this morning, just a little while back.
It is a reaffirmation of the alliance and the partnership that we are strengthening. What used to be where we used to refer to the Asia-Pacific region, we now refer to as the Indo-Pacific region, which is the, I think, a correct evolution of that understanding because of the global nature of all of politics and of all of trade and all of the economy. And to build upon what we already have had, but to certainly to explore the many opportunities that have arisen in the past few years because of the new technologies and the changing state of the global economy and the geopolitics around us now.
And for more on the President's visit, we are joined by Akshay Dongre. Well, Akshay, what key objectives are expected to be achieved during President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s 5-day state visit to India? And how does it align with the 75th anniversary of the diplomatic relations between the two countries? Tell us about the significance of the visit.
Well, Lipakshi, it's a major visit, especially the first state visit by President Marcos to India. He has come with the First Lady here, along with a big delegation from journalists to businessmen, policymakers, and other leaders from the government of Philippines. So this clearly seems to be a major turning point as far as India's ties with Philippines is concerned, that have always been friendly. And as you rightly mentioned, we are celebrating 75 years of diplomatic ties with the country. But there has been a lot of scope as far as the two countries are concerned, be it in terms of trade, in terms of defense, in terms of maritime security, in terms of maritime economy. And there are other areas such as, tourism, pharmaceutical industry, healthcare, education. So there is a lot of scope that the two countries can work upon, can strengthen their cooperation in, and especially it's not just about the objectives or the benefits that the two countries have or can have with strengthened ties. They can also ensure security of their maritime borders as well. As President Marcos, while speaking to the media today in the morning at Rashtrapati Bhavan, said that with the changing geopolitical landscape around the world, new alliances are forming, new countries are coming together, enhancing their trade, enhancing their cooperation, enhancing the security apparatus. So all of these are the areas where the two countries can have significant, significantly closer cooperation and better ties as far as bringing the two countries closer together. Back to you, Lipakshi.
Right. Akshay, you were mentioning that both the countries could come together as far as trade is concerned. In what ways might President Marcos Jr.'s visit contribute to strengthening the strategic cooperation, especially in sectors such as defense, trade and maritime security?
Well, India and Philippines have had, defense ties. The Philippines has imported a lot of Indian defense equipment over these last several years as well. And when it comes to, maritime borders, India and Philippines both are maritime powers in their respective regions. So when it comes to the Indian Ocean region, it's India. In Indo-Pacific region, it's Philippines. Philippines also historically a close ally of the U.S. and has had close ties with several countries in the region, especially with its Asian partners. So when it comes to the maritime borders or the maritime security, freedom of navigation, freedom of traveling, freedom of trade is of paramount importance to both India and Philippines in their respective seas, in their respective maritime borders. So the countries can come closer together with enhanced defense ties, with enhanced defense exchanges, with more regular defense exercises. So that is the defense aspect of it. But there is also trade involved. Then purely India has a lot to share in terms of expertise with Philippines. Philippines has a lot to share in terms of maritime economy with a country like India, with the Philippines having a very, very developed maritime economy. It can share its own expertise in tourism, in other sectors as well in India, with the pharmaceutical powerhouse in the world, and other sectors as well. It can share its own worldview as well as expertise, and that can rather enhance the cooperation between the two countries and bring the people together as well. With this 5-nation tour that has started from today and will not only be concentrated in New Delhi, but President Marcos will also be visiting Bengaluru and other places in the country with his delegation, especially the business delegation, that will look at India to enhance ties in terms of trade.
All right, Akshay, thank you so much for all that update. In fact, President Marcos Jr.'s visit surely reflects the broader goals of India's Act East policy, Vision Mahasagar, and its Indo-Pacific vision in relation to the Philippines. And still to come on DD India News Hour. We'll tell you what all is expected from the monsoon session of Parliament today. Kulgam encounter enters day 5, 3 terrorists killed. Gun battle continues in dense Akhal forest. And last rites of JMM founder Shibu Soren to be held today in Bokaro's Nemra village.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, and moving on as the monsoon session of Indian Parliament continues, reports of the Department-related Parliamentary Standing Committee on Finance to be presented in the upper house of the Parliament. Also reports of the Department-related Parliamentary Standing Committee on Energy, the House to take up the Carriage of Goods by Sea Bill 2025, bill to provide for the responsibilities, liabilities, rights and immunities attached to carriers with respect to the carriage of goods by sea. Well, the lower house of the parliament, or Lok Sabha, to take up the readjustment of representation of scheduled tribes in assembly constituencies of the State of Goa Bill 2024. The Merchant Shipping Bill 2024 will also be tabled for consideration and passing. The bill to consolidate and amend the law relating to merchant shipping to ensure compliance with India's obligation under the maritime treaties. And for more on the Parliament, we're joined by Dibyendu Mondal for more information. Well, Dibyendu, what all is scheduled for today in the Parliament, given the opposition's continued disruptions, as we can see, over the SIR issue in Bihar?
Well, Lipakshi, the disruptions would likely continue in both the houses of parliament, given the fact that the opposition strategy is clear, that they would like to hold, corner the government on the issue of SIR, which is the Special Intensive Review of Electoral Rolls in Bihar. So therefore, the ruckus that we have been witnessing over the last couple of weeks in both the houses of parliament, due to which there has been repeated disruption and there has been blockage of legislative business in both the houses of parliament, is likely to continue even today in both the houses, both in Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha. But as we speak, Lipakshi, there is an important meeting is underway right across where I am standing at the Parliament Library building, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi, along with the senior leadership of the BJP, including BJP President JP Nadda, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, is meeting all the NDA MPs at the library, at the Parliament Library, just across where I am standing at the moment. This meeting is absolutely crucial because the fact that, remember, Lipakshi, there in just a month away from now, we have the vice presidential election, and taking all the MPs of the NDA on board for a consensus vice presidential candidate is very crucial for the NDA, while the opposition will also chalk out their strategy to nominate their vice presidential candidate. And apart from this, the floor strategy of the NDA MPs would also be discussed in this particular meeting, wherein the MPs will be given directions from the top leadership as to what the strategy of the government would be in terms of helping both the houses of parliament function over the next 2 weeks, of which there is expected that the government is expected to do some business in terms of, sailing through some of the legislative businesses that has been listed in the parliament's list of business. So therefore, this meeting is very, very crucial. And also, Lipakshi, to bring up to date to our viewers with the NDA MPs have already felicitated Prime Minister Narendra Modi and congratulated him on Operation Sindoor, because remember, this is the first time that all the MPs of the NDA are meeting after Operation Sindoor, and this is the first time that they're also meeting in the monsoon session. So therefore, this is very, very crucial meeting that is currently underway as we speak at the library building inside the parliament, that is being chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself. Lipakshi.
All right. Thank you so much, Dibyendu, for all that information. Well, the National Democratic Alliance Parliamentary Party meet on Tuesday is underway at the Parliament Library building, New Delhi. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and top NDA leaders, including Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, Union Home Minister Amit Shah, are attending the meeting. During the meeting, a resolution was passed unanimously by NDA MPs on the success of Operation Sindoor and Operation Mahadev. Condolences were given to the family members of the victims of the Pahalgam terror attack. New MPs were also introduced to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was welcomed and felicitated with the thunderous applause amid chants of Har Har Mahadev after the success of Operation Sindoor and Operation Mahadev at the NDA Parliamentary Party meeting. And moving on, August 5th marks a historic turning point in India's constitutional and political journey. On this day in 2019, the Government of India revoked Article 370, ending the special status of Jammu and Kashmir, a move hailed by many as a step towards integration, equality and development. 5 years on, we look back at the constitutional transformation, the intense parliamentary debate and the positive changes on the ground. Here's a special report.
Article 370 was introduced as a temporary provision in 1949, drafted by N. Gopalaswamy Iyengar. It granted special status to Jammu and Kashmir, allowing the state to have its own constitution, its own flag, and considerable autonomy except in matters of defense, foreign affairs, and communication. This provision was based on the instrument of accession signed in 1947 by Maharaja Hari Singh after Pakistan-backed forces invaded the region. Over the decades, Article 370 created a unique constitutional setup, one that remained contentious. On August 5th, 2019, a decisive move was made, the government invoking the powers of the president under Article 371 issued a presidential order redefining the term Constituent Assembly to mean the Legislative Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir. With the state under president's rule at the time, Parliament assumed legislative powers and passed concurrent resolutions in the Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, effectively abrogating Article 370 and rendering Article 35A inoperative.
अनुच्छेद 370 के खंड 3 द्वारा प्रदत्त शक्तियों का प्रयोग करते हुए राष्ट्रपति संसद की सिफारिश पर यह घोषणा करते हैं कि यह दिनांक जिस दिन भारत के राष्ट्रपति द्वारा इस घोषणा पर हस्ताक्षर किए जाएंगे और इसे सरकारी गैजेट में प्रकाशित किया जाएगा, उस दिन से अनुच्छेद 370 के सभी खंड लागू नहीं होंगे, सिवाय खंड 1 के नामक तदनुसार पढ़ा जाएगा.
It wasn't just a constitutional maneuver, it was a moment of high drama and passionate debate in the parliament. In the Lok Sabha, the resolution to revoke Article 370 was passed with 351 votes in favour and 72 against, with one abstention. The Jammu and Kashmir Reorganisation Bill 2019 was also cleared, paving the way to bifurcate the state into two union territories, Jammu and Kashmir with a legislature and Ladakh without one. A day earlier, Rajya Sabha had also passed a resolution marking an unprecedented constitutional development. In December 2023, the Supreme Court upheld the abrogation in a unanimous verdict, observing that Article 370 was always meant to be temporary. The court also stated that Jammu and Kashmir had no internal sovereignty separate from India, and the Indian constitution now fully applies to the region.
कि 370 से जम्मू कश्मीर का और विशेषकर घाटी के युवाओं का भला नहीं हुआ है. आतंकवाद के रास्ते पर जो युवा गए, सबको मैं तो जिनके मन में अलगाववाद की भी भावना है या 370 के लिए भी जो लोग सोचते हैं कि हमारा कुछ छिन गया, मैं सबको विनम्र भाव से कहना चाहता हूं ये सदन का उपयोग कर कि आप हिसाब किताब तो करिए कि आपको 370 से क्या मिला. रोटी मिली, शिक्षा मिली, सुख सुविधा रोजगारी मिली, आरोग्य मिला, क्या मिला 370 से? क्यों झुनझुना पकड़े हुए हो? 370 है, वो जाने से धीरे धीरे हम घाटी के सभी लोगों को अपने नजदीक ला पाएंगे. उनके मन के अंदर एक नई आशा, नया उमंग, वहां पर जो विकास होगा.
Since the abrogation, the region has witnessed significant decline in terror incidents, stone pelting and separatist violence. The improved national security and increased presence of central laws, the law and order situation has seen marked improvement. For the first time, several central welfare schemes became accessible to people of Jammu and Kashmir, especially to women, scheduled caste and other marginalized communities. Discriminatory local laws were repealed, bringing gender justice and social equity in line with the rest of India. Tourism, which is the backbone of the region's economy, has seen a sharp rise. New industrial schemes like Prime Minister's Development Package and the Industrial Development Scheme have attracted investments and created job opportunities for the local youth. As Jammu and Kashmir embarks on a new journey within the constitutional framework of India, the abrogation of Article 370 remains a watershed moment. A move once called bold and controversial is now credited by many for unlocking peace, prosperity and parity for the region. Bureau Report, DD India.
And now let us listen to some of the reactions we are getting from the Union Territory.
How has Jammu and Kashmir changed for student community in past 6 years? What are the new things you are seeing
Sir, definitely things are changing drastically. We can see the new opportunities are there. People are exploring new things and they're getting benefited out of the new schemes and new courses are being launched. I guess the main hurdles, main obstacles which were in the path of their success, they are now getting out and people are coming out and they are coming out, even they are leaving the conventional jobs, they are coming up with the new things because new opportunities are available for them. Now, Alhamdulillah, things are changing. We are happy and we wish a positive change, and definitely a positive change is coming out, and the Kashmir is the eyewitness of that positive change.
What is your take on how new opportunities have come in the way of students of Kashmir?
If someone will say there is no change, I think he is in dreams. Change is there, and there is no lockdown. There are no protests. There are no calendars, and Alhamdulillah, we are enjoying.
I'm a local of Kashmir, and what I have seen in the past few years that Kashmir is emerging as a new global place. It's having a place in the national, when we see overall Kashmir has developed in the past few years. Kashmir is not what it used to be. Everything is getting developed, whether it's the roads, whether it's the tourism, every aspect is enhancing. And I feel very proud to be a Kashmiri because every aspect in Kashmir is enhancing and it's getting better day by day.
All right, and for more, we have Shabir Dar joining us from Srinagar on this. Well, Shabir, we heard of people seeing positive changes in these 6 years. Tell us about the general sentiment since the abrogation of Article 370.
Obviously, these students reflect the sentiment of the people because a lot has changed in Kashmir over the past 6 years, and we have seen how tourism has grown up, how the visitors have crossed all the previous records. Last year, we witnessed over 3 crore tourism in Kashmir. Similarly, the development sector, be it the hospital, the roads, and the schools, there has been a transformational change in all these sectors, and people are enjoying and they are appreciating the efforts taken by the central government in not only giving access to the people to all the welfare schemes of the government, be it the golden card scheme or the free ration or other welfare measures taken by the union government for the people of India. And Kashmiris and the people of Jammu and Kashmir witnessed many new changes after abrogation of Article 370. All the central government, central laws which were not applicable earlier in Jammu and Kashmir became applicable after 2019, which transformed into easing the lives of the people. So definitely this abrogation of the Article 370 on August 5, 2019 marks the watershed moment in the history of Jammu and Kashmir because it resulted in integrating Jammu and Kashmir in bringing parity and development in the lives of Jammu and Kashmir people.
All right, so a lot of positive changes out there. Obviously, economic development in Jammu and Kashmir can be seen. Thank you so much, Shabir, for all that information. And staying with Jammu and Kashmir, the encounter in the Akhal Forest area of Devsar in Kulgam district entered its 5th day on Tuesday with intermittent firing and explosions continuing. Director General of Police and senior commanders from the Army's 15 corps are closely monitoring the operation. The operation was launched on Friday evening after security forces received credible intelligence inputs about the presence of terrorists hiding in the dense Akhal forest. As the troops moved into cordon of the area, they came under fire, triggering a prolonged gun battle. According to officials, so far 3 terrorists have been killed and 3 soldiers injured, an official said. The firing is still going on and terrorists appear to be firing from multiple directions. The Indian Army last night kept the terrorists engaged in intense gunfights to prevent them from escaping in the dark. That is one of the longest anti-terrorist operations and is likely to take more time. And moving on, the last rites of Jharkhand Mukti Morcha founder and former Chief Minister Shibu Soren will be performed today in his native village, Nimra, near Barka Nala in Bokaro district. The 81-year-old tribal leader and veteran politician breathed his last on Monday morning at Sir Gangaram Hospital in New Delhi after prolonged illness related to kidney complications. A large number of supporters, political workers and tribal community members are also expected to gather to bid farewell to the Deshumgiru, a title commonly used to refer to Soren, acknowledging his leadership among the tribal communities. And time now for a short break. We'll be back in a while. Welcome back. You're watching TT India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. And moving on to West Asian updates now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will convene his security cabinet on Tuesday to decide on Israel's next steps in Gaza following the collapse of indirect ceasefire talks with Hamas. It comes a day before a UN Security Council meeting on the fate of hostages still held in the Palestinian territory. Last Saturday, during a visit to the country, U.S. Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff had said he was working with the Israeli government on a plan that would effectively end the conflict in Gaza. But Israeli officials have also floated ideas, including expanding the military offensive in Gaza and annexing parts of the shattered enclave. The failed ceasefire talks in Doha had aimed to clinch agreements on a US-backed proposal for a 60-day truce during which aid would be flown into Gaza and half of the hostages Hamas is holding would be freed in exchange for Palestinian prisoners jailed in Israel. The envoy's visit was seen in Israel as very significant, but later on Sunday, the Israeli officials signaled that pursuit of a deal would be pointless, threatening more force. Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar suggested on Monday that the gaps were still too wide to bridge. And Canada delivered humanitarian assistance through airdrops to Gaza, again accusing Israel of violating international law. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation reported that it was Canadian Armed Forces' first humanitarian airdrop over Gaza using their own aircraft. The Israeli military said 120 food aid packages for Gaza's residents were airdropped by 6 countries, including Canada. The other 5 were Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Germany and Belgium. Canada said last week it plans to recognize the state of Palestine at a meeting of the United Nations in September, ratcheting up pressure on Israel as starvation spreads in Gaza. Well, Canada also said on Monday that Israeli restrictions have posed challenges for humanitarian agencies. And Finland's President Alexander Stubb held a phone call with U.S. President Donald Trump to discuss Russia-Ukraine conflict and supporting efforts for an immediate ceasefire on Monday. Trump has threatened to impose new sanctions on Russia and buyers of its oil, including India and China, unless President Vladimir Putin agrees to end the conflict by Friday. Now, both the leaders also discussed ongoing talks about icebreakers. Early in June, Trump said that the U.S. is negotiating to buy 15 icebreakers from Finland as part of his broader plan to acquire up to 40 icebreakers to strengthen Arctic security and support resource development and logistics. Meanwhile, U.S. Ambassador to NATO Matthew Whitaker said that he expects more nations to fund U.S. arms for Ukraine following the Netherlands' announcement of €500 million to the scheme.
See a series of announcements in the coming weeks. You know, when we announced this facility that allowed our NATO allies to buy U.S. equipment and provide that to Ukraine for their defense, you know, we had a lot of our allies raise their hand and line up. A lot of them are coming together in groups to pool their money and their resources together to provide these armaments and munitions. And so, you know, it's the whole purpose of NATO.
Well, moving on, Brazil's Supreme Court on Monday issued a house arrest order for former President Jair Bolsonaro, who is standing trial for allegedly plotting a coup. Justice Alexandre de Moraes said in his decision that the right-wing firebrand did not comply with judicial restraining orders imposed on him last month. Moraes also banned Bolsonaro from receiving visits, with exceptions for lawyers and people authorized by the court in use of a cell phone either directly or through third parties. The restrictions on Bolsonaro were imposed over allegations that he courted the interference of Trump, who recently tied steep new tariffs on Brazilian goods. The former Brazilian leader is facing charges that he conspired with dozens of his allies to overturn his 2022 electoral loss. Bolsonaro's press representative confirmed the house arrest order and restrictions on using a cell phone. Well, meanwhile, the United States on Monday condemned a decision by Brazil's Supreme Court to put former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro under house arrest. The department's Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs said in a post on X, and I quote, "Putting even more restrictions on Jair Bolsonaro's ability to defend himself in public is not a public service. Let Bolsonaro speak," unquote. And the United States and Rwanda have agreed for the African country to accept up to 250 migrants deported from the United States as President Donald Trump's administration takes a hardline approach towards immigration. Under the agreement, Rwanda has the ability to approve each individual proposed for resettlement. Those approved will be provided with workforce training, healthcare and accommodation support to jumpstart their lives in Rwanda, giving them the opportunity to contribute to one of the fastest growing economies in the world over the last decade. President Donald Trump aims to deport millions of immigrants in the U.S. illegally, and his administration has sought to ramp up removals to third countries, including sending convicted criminals to South Sudan and Eswatini, formerly known as Swaziland. Rwanda has in recent years positioned itself as a destination country for migrants that Western countries would like to remove, despite concerns by rights groups that Kigali does not respect basic human rights. And preliminary talks between Thailand and Cambodia, defense officials, started on Monday in Malaysia ahead of a key ministerial-level meeting on Thursday. The ceasefire, which came after 5 days of border clashes between Cambodia and Thailand, was reached at a meeting in Malaysia last Monday with help from the United States and China also observing. Well, Malaysian Armed Forces Chief General Mohammad Nizam Jafar said both parties are now in the final stages of discussion over proposed terms of reference and the formation of an interim defense attaché monitoring force, which would precede the establishment of a formal ASEAN monitoring team. The secretariat-level meeting, hosted at Wisma Perwira by the Malaysian Armed Forces, brings together 54 representatives from both countries in an effort to lay the groundwork for lasting stability after weeks of deadly border clashes. Well, over 190 countries will try to break an impasse and reach an agreement over the next fortnight on the first ever global plastics treaty that will create a legally binding framework to end plastic pollution, including in the marine environment. This will be the second installment of the fifth meeting of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee, Inc. 5 of the United Nations, which will take place in Geneva, Switzerland. Negotiators will pick up from the previous meeting in Busan, South Korea last December, where talks had collapsed over critical and unresolved issues. Plastic pollution has reached even the most remote corners of the planet today. 460 million tons of plastic are produced annually, of which only 9% is recycled, while the rest leaks into the environment. And UN Environment Programme Chief Inger Anderson stressed the urgency of reaching a meaningful deal, warning of a catastrophic impact of plastic pollution, especially on marine ecosystems.
I want an effective treaty. I want a treaty that ends plastic pollution, including in the marine environment. That's why we're here. We're not here to not get something or to get something that's meaningless. But the reality is also, and this is where 40 years in this business, the impacts are here and now. And we have to stop this from spiraling out of control.
And still to come in DD India News. Over 3,000 Boeing fighter jet workers go on strike. We also get you how India turned the tables around thrashing England by a 6-run victory at the Ovals. And Novak Djokovic withdraws from Cincinnati Open again, prioritizes fitness ahead of US Open title bid.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Kuran, and on to some business news now. The European Union will suspend 2 packages of planned countermeasures against the United States tariffs for 6 months following a deal with the United States. A European Commission spokesperson said in a statement that the EU will continue to work with the US to implement the tariff agreement reached on July 27th. The statement said that to achieve this goal, the European Commission will take necessary measures to suspend the retaliatory tariffs against the US originally scheduled to take effect starting this Thursday for a period of 6 months. The suspended retaliatory tariffs include a response to the US tariffs on EU steel and aluminium exports and a response to the baseline tariffs implemented by the Trump administration and the proposed auto tariffs. US President Donald Trump and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen held an informal meeting in Scotland, the United Kingdom, on July 27th. After the meeting, Trump announced that the US and the EU had reached a consensus on a new trade agreement. And Tesla has granted CEO Elon Musk shares worth about $29 billion in a new pay deal aimed at keeping the billionaire entrepreneur at the helm. The company described the interim award of the 96 million new shares as a final first step, good faith payment to honor Musk's more than $50 billion pay package from 2018 that was struck down by a Delaware court last year. Musk can claim the new award if he remains in a top executive role for another 2 years and a court does not reinstate the 2018 package currently on appeal. He has to hold the shares for 5 years and can buy them for $23.34 per share, the same as the exercise price of the 2018 award. Tesla will also put to vote a longer-term CEO compensation plan at its annual investor meeting on November 6th. And more than 3,200 union members who assembled Boeing's fighter jets in the St. Louis area and Illinois went on strike on Monday after rejecting a second contract offer the previous day. Boeing Defense said it was ready for the work stoppage and it will implement a contingency plan that uses non-labor workers. According to the company, the rejected 4-year contract would have raised the average wage by roughly 40% and included a 20% general wage increase and a $5,000 ratification bonus. It also included increasing periodic raises, more vacation time and sick leave. Well, you're watching DD India News. Our time now for some sports news. India scripted a remarkable comeback to pull a famous 6-run victory at the Oval, denying England the series win. What turned out was a dramatic end to a thrilling test series. Here's how the action unfolded at the Oval.
Were drawn in a dramatic fashion to the Anderson Tendulkar Trophy in the 5th and final test match at the Oval. India clinched their narrowest win in test cricket, one that would be remembered for ages. Mohammad Siraj inspired India to a famous 6-run win in what turned out to be a fitting end to the test series. Along with Prasidh Krishna, Siraj snatched victory for India from the jaws of defeat. India set England 374 runs to win and draw the series. In reply, England were on a bit of a pickle at 106 for 3. However, Harry Brook and Joe Root launched the counter-attack to push India on the back foot. But late on day 4, as the condition turned conducive to bowling, India managed to pick 3 wickets, and England, 301 for 3 at one stage, lost their 7 wickets for 66 runs, a collapse prompted by Brooks' reckless dismissal after he had made a superb century. India suddenly had a chink of hope and they took full advantage, removing Jacob Battle and Joe Root before bad light and rain ended the 4th day early. Then turned out Siraj, India's hero, dismissing Jamie Smith and Jamie Overton before bowling Gus Atkinson to complete a 5-wicket haul. After Prasidh Krishna had bowled Josh Tongue for naught, Chris Wokes walked out to bat wearing a sling to protect his dislocated shoulder with 17 runs still needed. Atkinson hit Siraj for 6 to give England brief hope and cleverly protected Wokes from the strike. But Siraj produced another brilliant Yorker to earn India their narrowest ever win. India took the last 4 wickets in under an hour to bowl out England for 367. England still needed 35 runs to complete their second highest test run chase and by far the largest for any team on this venue. The Oval was full of the final act of series that fluctuated wildly over 7 weeks and under grey skies in an atmosphere of unremitting tension as one of the most dramatic endings in a test match duly played out. Sports Desk, DD India.
Well, following a side series draw against England, Indian skipper Shubman Gill hailed Test cricket as the most rewarding and satisfying format.
Test cricket should be as it is. It's in my opinion, it is the most rewarding and satisfying format. You work the hardest to be able to get a win, and the best thing about this format is it always gives you a second chance, which none of the other formats give. So if you keep working hard, if you keep doing the right things, there is always a second chance.
Well, England's captain Ben Stokes, who missed the Oval Test, lauded India's efforts and admitted that a draw is a fair outcome of such a compelling 5-match series.
You know, toe-to-toe pretty much, well, for 25 days. You know, two very good teams who have, you know, thrown everything at each other, left nothing out there. You know, so I guess from a cricket fan's point of view, you sort of go 2-2 is probably fair. Obviously, we're disappointed now to have not got the result that we wanted to give us a series win.
And the 24-time Grand Slam champion Novak Djokovic has withdrawn from the Cincinnati Open for the second consecutive year. The Serbian tennis icon opted out of the US Open warm-up tournament following consecutive semi-final exits at the French Open and Wimbledon. Djokovic had stated earlier that he wants to preserve his body and stay fit for Grand Slams. Djokovic is chasing a record-breaking 25th Grand Slam title but hasn't come close to lifting a Grand Slam title this calendar year. Djokovic also withdrew from Cincinnati last year after his triumph in the singles event at the Paris Olympics. The US Open will take place from August 24 to September 7th in New York City. And former Wimbledon champion Alina Rybakina and teenager Victoria Mboko have advanced to the semi-finals of the Canadian Open. Rybakina reached the semi-finals after her quarter-final opponent Marta Kostyuk retired in the second set with a wrist injury. Meanwhile, Mboko secured a surprising straight-set win over Spain's Jessica Bozas Menero to reach her first WTA 1000 semi-final. 7 of the top 10 players were eliminated before the quarter-finals, opening the door for such upstarts as 18-year-old Mboko. Both players will clash in the semi-finals of the tournament on Thursday. And US President Donald Trump will sign an executive order to create an Olympic task force to handle security and other issues related to the 2028 Summer Olympic Games. The task force will coordinate federal, state and local government work on transportation. It will also streamline visa processing and credentialing for foreign athletes, coaches, officials and media. The United States will host the Olympics in Los Angeles in 2028. Last month, organizers released the first look at the Olympic competition schedule. Well, on this very day, 5 years ago, Prime Minister Narendra Modi laid the foundation stone for the construction of the Ram Temple at Ram Janambhoomi in Ayodhya. Let's take a look at the historic event. August 5th, 2020, Ayodhya, Uttar Pradesh. A historic date. On this day, 5 years ago, Prime Minister Narendra Modi laid the foundation stone for the construction of the grand Ram Temple. This marked the auspicious beginning of the construction of the magnificent temple for Ram Lalla.
सदियों का इंतजार आज समाप्त हो रहा है। राम मंदिर के लिए कई सदियों तक कई पीढ़ियों ने अखंड अविरत एक निष्ठ प्रयास किया है। आज का ये दिन उसी तप, त्याग और संकल्प का प्रतीक है।
This is the same birthplace that lives on in Hindu beliefs, scriptures and legends. It is the very land where Lord Sri Ram was born in the Treta Yuga, in the home of Emperor Dashrath and Queen Kaushalya, in the city of Ayodhya, situated on the banks of the Saryu River. From the Treta Yuga to the 16th century, it remained a center of faith for devotees of Lord Ram. But in 1528 AD, Mughal Emperor Babur had a mosque built on the birthplace by demolishing the temple. Devotees continued to hold their unwavering faith in Lord Ram, but were deprived of the right to worship at his birthplace.
भगवान राम की अद्भुत शक्ति देखिए। इमारतें नष्ट हो गई, क्या कुछ नहीं हुआ? अस्तित्व मिटाने का हर कोई प्रयास हुआ, बहुत हुआ, लेकिन राम आज भी हमारे मन में बसे हैं। हमारी संस्कृति के आधार है। श्री राम भारत की मर्यादा है। श्री राम मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम है।
A period of struggle began. Centuries of foreign rule passed. The legal battle began in 1949. After decades, on November 9, 2019, a 5-judge constitutional bench of the Supreme Court awarded the land ownership of the birthplace to the Hindus. The 500-year-old struggle came to an end, and August 5th, 2020 was etched in history as the day the foundation stone was laid by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The temple was inaugurated on January 22, 2024. Bureau Report, DD India. All right, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.
Welcome